Hello and welcome to another Friday of healthy snacking. Today we're going to be making almond flour scones, almond flour blueberry scones. So I'm really excited to do this. I've never made this before, so I'll be kind of learning along with you. So let's get started. First, we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. That's 350. And then in a medium bowl, or I have a large bowl here, we're going to combine almond flour, and we are going to need 1 cup of almond flour, blanched. All of these ingredients you can find on Amazon, at your local grocery store. This I actually got from Costco. So wherever you shop, I know Walmart has almond flour. So we're going to do 1 cup of almond flour. And then a 1/4 cup of coconut powder. And I got this at ShopRite, but again, you can get coconut powder anywhere. I know Walmart carries it as well. So sometimes it has large pieces. You're just gonna wanna like break it up so it's a powder. Okay. So now we have 3 tablespoons of your sugar. So I use a sugar substitute. Stevia is what I prefer. So we're going to do 3 tablespoons. We're going to mix all of our dry ingredients together first. And then we're gonna mix our wet ingredients in a separate bowl. All right. 3 tablespoons of stevia. Next, we're gonna add some salt. And we need a 1/4 teaspoon. A 1/4 tablespoon of salt. And our baking powder. So we want baking powder. And we're going to use 1/2 a teaspoon of baking powder. Okay, then in a separate smaller bowl, let's put this one aside. Focus on the smaller bowl for our wet ingredients. Oh, that's our oven. Our oven is preheated. In a smaller bowl, we're going to whisk together our coconut oil, which is 2 tablespoons melted, and I have that right here. Again, you can find coconut oil at any store now. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons of melted coconut oil. And then we're going to mix some unsweetened almond milk. And we need a 1/4 cup of that. Okay. We're also going to mix in 1 egg, 1 large egg. Careful not to get any shells in. I'm going a little fast, but if you need to pause and catch up, do that. So after the egg, I'm going to wash my hands. And lastly, add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Whoops. All right. And now we're going to mix this, whisk it. You could use a fork. Actually, I might use a fork. I'm better at whisking with a fork. Or you could use a whisk. So it's pretty well incorporated. And now we're going to fold the wet ingredients into the dry. So I'm just gonna give this a little mix. These are wet ingredients. There are some larger clumps. I'm just gonna try to pat those out. And now I'm going to fold. So in order to fold, you're basically, I like to put it up at an angle a little. Okay. And then just kind of lightly kind of scoop in that motion. So that's what I'm going to do now when I add the wet into the dry. So we're going to mix it or fold it until a dough forms. So I'm just gonna do a little at a time. I'm just gonna pour the wet ingredients into the wet, or pour the wet into the dry and fold it. So folding is different than mixing because you're gentler. It allows for more air to get in. When you mix it, a lot of air gets in, but also you can be a little bit rougher. So if it's a more delicate dough, it might have you fold it, which is just a little bit gentler, slower. You take your time. Okay. And it just mixes it in a softer fashion. So there is a dough starting to form. So I'm just kind of repeating this, trying to mix in those really dry ingredients. You're kind of taking the mixture and folding it in half. If you've watched Netflix recently, there is a scene in a TV show where they argue about what is folding. Well, this is folding. They're trying to make a recipe and they don't know how to fold. So you're just gentle. We're trying to get all of the ingredients in together. You see, we're not being as rough as when we mix, but things are still getting incorporated. They're mixing well together. If you see an area, see there's a little bit of dry that's not mixed with the wet. Just try to get those areas. All right, now we have a dough. So now we're going to mix in half a cup of fresh washed blueberries. So I just washed these, whoops, and we're gonna fold these in as well. So again, we're just going to do this motion just to gently mix in the blueberries. If you see big pieces of dough, just try to break them off with the spatula. We want to be a little bit gentler. So I'm not trying to smush the blueberries, but just kind of mix up the dough portion so it all gets pretty well mixed. So there isn't like one scone that has a lot of blueberries and one scone that has none. I want to kind of make it as even as possible, evenly distributed. This looks pretty well incorporated, pretty well distributed. All right. So now I have a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. It kept rolling up, so I kind of like folded it so it won't. And now we're gonna take the dough, put it on the baking sheet. We're gonna get our hands dirty, so wash your hands, which you should have done in the beginning, but let's wash them again. And we're gonna start to form a shape. I'm gonna take off my ring, roll up my sleeves, and we're going to kind of form a disc shape. So like a circular kind of disc. And again, if you see some areas that don't have a lot of blueberries, whoop, just pop them in. Try to make sure there's blueberries in every piece. Kind of smooth out any cracks you'll see. And then we're going to cut it, it's about 1 inch thick. So this is still a little thick. So let's just spread it out a little. There we go, that's a little better. So I'm gonna take my hand and just go around the edges like this. And that's gonna kind of create like a barrier, make it smoother, a little thick. Okay, it's quite oval shaped, but that's fine. I'm gonna go wash my hands. So now I'm going to cut it into triangular pieces, kind of like I would cut a pizza. So I'm gonna do one straight across, one this way, one this way, just fixing some slices, and then one this way. Now we're gonna take our spatula and kind of separate them a little. We're going to separate them. We don't want them to touch when we cook them. So we've got one piece here. This goes here. And then I'm just gonna work on the next piece. A little blueberry on the end. And if like the edges start to like come apart, you can just push them back together. If your pizza cutter is sharp enough, it should cut through blueberries so you have even slices like this. And like I realized that my dough was shaped more like an oval, so they're not gonna be all evenly distributed. So like this is gonna be a little bit bigger than this, but that's fine. If you don't have a pizza cutter, you could have used a knife. Okay, this is perfect. All right, so we're gonna separate these. They're going to expand a little, so we want to make sure there's enough room in between each of them. this should be fine. All right. So we've got some space between each. Our oven is preheated to 350. I'm just going to tighten up the edges like this. And now I'm carefully going to put this in the oven. The oven's going to be hot, so we want to be very careful, and we're going to cook this for 18 to 22 minutes. So I'll see you then. Okay, so it's been 22 minutes and they look a little ready. Because the almond flour is the flour that we use, they're not going to brown up and look like regular flour scones would, but they do look cooked. They look really yummy. And because we used almond flour, they're healthier for us than typical white bleached flour would look. So I'm actually going to put a trivet under this tray so that it's not directly on the counter. But these are our scones. Very hot, so be careful if you touch. But now I'm just going to transfer these to a plate. All right, so these are our blueberry almond flour scones. We're going to let them cool and then enjoy. You can put a little bit of butter on it or just eat them as is. They're really delicious. So these are, again, made with coconut flour and almond flour, so a little bit better for us than the bleached white flour. We have some fresh fruit in them. They're low in sugar, and they're gonna be really delicious, and I'm really excited to eat them. They smelled so good while they were baking, and that's it. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a very happy weekend.